shattered, angry, love.
You are listening to The Brave Files, real stories from people living courageously. You can listen to the show anywhere you enjoy podcasts, and we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on Apple Podcasts. It really does make a difference, and we appreciate it. Now here's your host, Heather Vickery.
Welcome to The Brave Files, everyone. This is Heather Vickery. I was introduced to today's guest by several women I adore, and those of you listening, Jen and Nikki, you know who you are. Robbin Carrol took her skills as a yoga teacher and her passion for helping children in underprivileged communities and created an organization called I Grow Chicago. Through I Grow Chicago, Robbin works to integrate the practices of restorative justice, artistic expression, mindful movement, and community development to create a new model of social change. You guys can tell how excited I am about this, right? These are all the things that get me really, really worked up. Robbin and I Grow Chicago, they have worked to completely transform what was one of Chicago's most dangerous streets. I have been so looking forward to this. Robbin, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to be on your show.
Awesome. So I would love to know, I really love what you're doing with I Grow Chicago. I actually had the pleasure of attending the Peace Fest back in August. I think it was August, right?
Yep, September.
Okay. I brought all of my kids, and it actually was quite an experience. We are, as everyone who listens to the show, we are these lily white folks, and Inglewood is not an area we have checked out before. My girls are aged 5 to almost 14. And first of all, I loved in them, they never questioned anything. They weren't like, where are we going? What are we doing? As we got closer and closer to Inglewood, and it looked very different from their own neighborhood. And everyone was so welcoming and loving. And my girls just jumped right in. There was one little fella who wanted to play hide and seek, and off goes my 8-year-old to go play hide and seek with him. And we just felt so at home on this street. Can you tell us how you went from teaching yoga at an inner city school to conceptualizing and creating I Grow Chicago?
Well, you do know that everything comes in small pieces, but it started because I had moved in. I had been teaching yoga out in open fields, and I moved into the school system, and it didn't take long to see that the kids that I really wanted to get were either suspended, expelled, or sitting, in the timeout box.
Box. Good Lord.
So that was a beginning of it. And then, of course, schools don't really welcome felons, and most of the kids' parents have some kind of criminal background. So I just felt that it wasn't a welcoming environment for what I wanted to do. I wanted everyone to be welcome, and that wasn't it. So that led to saying, hey, well, why don't we open a house and create this?
Yeah, you make that sound so easy and simple, but it is what you did was, and it's your story to tell. So I'll let you correct me if I get it wrong. But from what I understand, you purchased a house that had been abandoned. You renovated it, right? And you created what is now the Peace House. Is that what you call it?
Yeah. And it took several years. It wasn't very easy at the time to buy houses in Inglewood because they were all in some state of, let's say, lending foreclosure. People thought they owned their houses, but they didn't. The bank owned them. And we really didn't want to disrupt anything. So even if you didn't really own your house, but you were living in it and you thought you owned it, we certainly didn't want to be the ones to tell you. Right. And we also didn't want to take a house that was going to change the block in a negative way, right? We didn't want to take someone's house that maybe their grandmother had lived in. So we picked a house that was up for demolition. It was to be demoed in April, and we bought it in March.
Wow. So just barely. And you completely renovated. I've been in the house. It's lovely inside. In fact, I think I Instagrammed some artwork that you had in the bathroom. Full of great inspirational quotes. And when I walked in, we went in to use the bathroom, the girls and I did. And also you have these great buttons that say, put the fucking guns down. Yep. And I needed one of those. And there are some that don't use the F word. And my girls all said, oh, I want one for my backpack. My oldest in particular has really taken this gun violence thing very to heart. She's quite vocal about it. So they all had to have the buttons. But when we walked in, there were some young people getting their hair done, and you had just come out of a dunk tank. And you said, we have a beauty parlor. I love our beauty parlor. And I just thought, what a lovely community situation you have happening here.
Yeah, we have built a community. We went back and so violence and poverty and isolation separates everybody. And so by building the Peace House and building it all together, and the community has been supportive since day one. Really, we couldn't have built the Peace House without the community.
Well, that was my question. What do they say? First of all, how do you step in and say to them, this is the thing I want to do in your community? And also, to be fair, how do you do that and not have it be white saviorism?
Well, there's both in there, right?
Yeah.
So what I did is we went and gave Subway sandwiches away out on the corner of 64th and Honore, and just said, hey, we have some ideas. What do what does the community think about this? And everybody was like, yep, we really would like to have a Peace House. We'd really like to do this, and we will completely support you.
I love that.
I drove back the next day wondering, would anyone remember the conversation? And almost everybody that had come came back out to say, yes, when are we starting?
I love
So that really did it. And then the community so everybody that had really destroyed the community were the ones that really came over and really started helping to rebuild the house and rebuild the community. So it opened space to see each other differently, right? You no longer were the guy that really destroyed the community when you were building the fence.
That's really interesting. So when you say they're the ones that destroy the community, what are you specifically saying?
Well, people come into your communities, right? I shouldn't even say come in, right? You live there, but the community starts the violence and the shootings and the sales of drugs and things that, of course, are all really necessary if you have no other way to make an income. But the fact is it does degrade a community atmosphere. So we just plain and simply started building a community where everyone started seeing each other again and saw each other differently. So I can't say that, yes, if you were probably someone who sold drugs, you might still sell them today. But the fact is we all see you differently.
Right.
We don't see you as the enemy. We see you as somebody that maybe we can go down and say, hey, this isn't working for us on this block. Can you find another block?
Yeah. Right. Oh my gosh. That's so interesting. And I just love the ability there are lots of sides to every person. It's just never black and white.
No, but a lot of times we view, right? The minute we see somebody like whatever, pants down, young, black youth, tattooed, our heads do not go to the fact that was a really could be a great dad or a very loving brother and sister, a really good boyfriend, right? Those are not the things we see. So,
and listen, listeners, we're not saying that we're condoning the behavior that's dangerous and unsafe. We aren't saying that. But what I think Robbin and the folks at I Grow Chicago are doing is giving these people knowledge and experience that it doesn't have to be that other way. I would be willing to bet that a number of people you've touched no longer do the dangerous and violent things. Perhaps not all of them, right? But
we firmly believe, right? Once you start to connect to your community and to each other and to yourself, then you actually want more.
Yeah.
Right?
And to see they have choices, that they don't have to go down that path, which I think a lot of people feel that way. And most people don't know that these people feel like they don't have a choice, right? When you talk to...
I don't even know if it's not you really don't have a choice. If you've grown up in these communities where you've never left your 5-block radius, you've been kicked out of your schools, you're not wanted in your community, you're not wanted in your church, right?
Yeah. But people don't realize that. I had an airplane conversation with a 43-year-old white man from Tennessee a couple months ago. This is it's a whole podcast series. It was really interesting. I felt like it was I had been social justice training my entire life for this 1 2-hour-long conversation, but it never occurred to him that the folks who didn't have jobs and were on welfare, or the folks who sold drugs, that they didn't have choices, that they didn't know how to get out of what they were into.
Right.
Never thought of it.
Seen anything different.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
always say I was that person also, right? I lived downtown and I was absolutely that person that would have said, everyone that goes to jail belongs in jail. All of the things that are just, right? My taxes go to welfare. I'm not paying any more money. But when you actually see it
Yeah.
and you realize, I think that's where my word anger came from. I became really angry that I had been conditioned to believe this and how untrue it was.
Yeah. How did you go from that person to even being willing to teach your class in the inner city school?
Oh, my son started going to school on the South Side. So that was a beginning of, starting to see, hey, things aren't quite adding up when I would take him in and out of the school neighborhood. And then I went to a lecture by a woman who's a Nobel laureate, and she wrote the book Mighty Be My Powers, and she helped to eliminate or get rid of Charles Dock in Liberia.
Wow.
And a man stood up in the middle of the audience and very arrogantly said, I'll give you any amount of money you want. What you're doing is amazing. I'll write you a check right now. And she said, sir, we in Liberia know a whole lot about Chicago. We don't need your money. You find a corner and you help people in your neighborhood. And so that's what made me say, hey, I'm going to go find a corner. I actually turned to my husband. I said, well, I now know what I'm going to do.
Wow. I literally have chills up and down my spine thinking of that woman saying, listen, take care of your own community.
She was like, we've heard of Chicago. We know your problems.
Absolutely. And there's so much, we'll talk about charity a little bit later, but there's so much we can still do in our communities that we don't do. And I'm just so impressed with everything you're doing. Now, I have to ask, your bio says that you practice, and I don't know if you particularly teach them or if it's just something that you do at the Peace House, but all different types of yoga and classes. I'm going to name them, and you have to tell me what they are and how they're different from regular yoga. So you've got street yoga, yoga kids, that one I get. My kids have done that. Radiant child yoga, brain gym, and heart math. What are these things?
I had just started, in doing research about trauma, violence, and I have my own, family issues with my son and really wanting to heal his trauma. And so, everything becomes really body-based. So I had started out with training in brain gym, which really shows you, how do you need to use your body. They do an awful lot of body movement in schools and why kids can't learn, right? Like why sitting a child for, 8 hours in a desk is just not productive to
absolutely
action,
My
right?
kids all grew up and two of them are still there in a progressive education school. That's the polar opposite of all of that. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to give them that. So
right.
Yeah.
And your kids learn that there are times that they just have to move because you have to get this out of your body, right? Like whatever's happening, we have to shake it out.
Absolutely.
So brain gym, all of them were body-based therapies and new ways of looking at the fact that movement is what we need if we're going to heal.
Right. Okay. So street yoga in particular.
Street yoga is just the mere fact that, of course, we didn't have yoga studios. So, I would just pick a corner and teach yoga. And that would be to whoever was around and whoever came out. So I would just drive on the South Side and just stop and teach yoga on a corner.
Did you worry for your safety?
I know that things can happen. I have a family that was very concerned, right? So even over my concern was my family's concern. It never made the difference, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I think that is the difference, that the risk that you're taking and you choose to take that risk because the outcome is more valuable than the risk.
Well, we're also asking every day that there's people in these communities that, are really there making a life and really doing a beautiful job. Also, take that risk every day.
Absolutely. Okay. And I have to know heart math. I feel like I may really dig this. What's heart math?
Actually, it is a program. You should look it up. You can just Google it, heart math. They really have a whole focus in the sense that it is your heart that leads, not your head. And so they have programs in which you can learn to drop into your heart so that you really speak from the center versus from your head, right?
Yeah.
And so they have all sorts of different programs that you can plug in and on the computer see when you drop into your heart and when you're not. So it's a great way to learn to relax. We've done it a lot out on where we, plug people in and say, hey, how, and it's amazing to see, who can drop in your heart and who can't.
Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out.
Love it. It's all you have to do is look it up. The program's simple and it's very effective.
I do love it. And we'll link to it in the show notes, you guys, so you can check it out as well. So what's happening now with iGrow? It's more than just the Peace House. You have this phenomenal garden. I want to hear about the creation of the garden. My kids, we have a tiny little garden and they loved it. It's color coordinated, which got my little one so excited. I thought that was so cool. And a section that appeared to me to be a meditation space. Tell us about going from just the Peace House to sort of continuing to develop this street.
So one thing that happened is when we first got out there, right, is that to work on the house is one thing, but we needed to really be able to mark that we were here and that we were there to really bring positive to the neighborhood. So we immediately started painting the fences and colors because, right, the community, it was drab, it was ugly. It was brown, it was gray.
Right. It isn't anymore. It's beautiful.
We immediately started painting everything. We started planting flowers and, right, there were no bees, there were no butterflies because there really was no vegetation. So we immediately started that. And that was the way in which we were like making sure that the community and everyone knew we're here. And of course, that immediately brought out a lot of the community members.
Yeah.
To really help with all of that.
There's so much healing in gardening. That sounds so trite, but really getting into the earth and watching things grow, especially from seed, is miraculous.
Exciting.
It is exciting.
Exciting. And we now have, we have tons of bees and butterflies and we see hummingbirds and things that we just never had. So again, that changes, right? How you feel about yourself and how you feel about your community.
Your community. Absolutely. So, what do you do with the food that grows there?
And we're an open garden. So really everyone just comes and takes what they need and what they want. We will do a lot with the kids where we've come a very long way. Initially, when we started, most people said, don't let my kids eat out of the dirt. Oh. So we've come a really long way in just understanding food exposure. We used to never be able to eat strawberries, berries of any type. Nobody really believed that things grew from the ground. So today,
because they were they, and that's a little bit of a food desert, right? People were eating.
Yeah, there wasn't
from the gas station and the convenience stores. Yeah.
And I think even over food desert, I always say, a lot of it is really exposure, right? If you really don't see these things and you don't have these things, even when you open up food stores, right?
They still don't shop there. You're right.
Right. Yeah. So we have to change exposure. And so the garden does that. So we have found that we will do a lot of herbs, a lot of vegetables, but really too, we've started doing a lot more flowers and things that are really beautiful. Last year, we started putting in a medicine wheel so that we would do the 36 principles of life and have ways that we can do circle training and restorative circles and just conversations in a medicine wheel.
We
put in a deck so that we, can have.
I wondered, my kids thought it was a stage, but we're a theater family. They were like, what do you do on the stage?
Yes, no, we've done improv and poetry and ecstatic dance, and we can do yoga, and we can have a lot of music there. So it just works really well as a platform. That's and right now we're expanding it to include the house that we bought next door. So we'll take that on into the next lot. We just now built a chicken coop, Chicks for Justice. And
it's the best.
Oh, I love it too. So again, it's how do you create community and how do you create safeness and brave space and places to feel like you belong and you're loved.
I love that you just said brave space. I get that. I know what you mean when you say that. It's a term that I've never heard and I've never thought of. Tell us what you feel when you say create a brave space.
Well, we say that a lot at the Peace House. There's probably two reasons we do. We know that we are brave space, right? It takes courage to walk in our doors. It takes courage to, want to do something different or believe that you have the right to do something with your life that's different. So that takes a lot of courage, and that takes being brave. And then the other places is that initially when we opened, everyone said that we were a safe house. And the fact is we are not safe, right? We cannot tell you that, something won't happen when you come there. We actually have a bullet hole in our wall upstairs, and we have never patched it. And we don't, because the point is we are not safe space, but we are brave space. And you may come, you may love, you may learn, you may find kindness, but we do not guarantee safe.
Right. Did that bullet hole come after you'd built the Peace House?
Yeah, the house was built. It was one night somebody shot up. They weren't shooting at our house, but again, that goes with a lot of things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So our house took several bullets.
I just am so into this idea of brave space. It's so much what my whole show is about, and my career as a coach is. You just can't be guaranteed of anything ever, right? And so to choose bravely, which is my thing. And I love that you're doing that, and these community members are doing it. I have to know, go back to the garden, whose idea was it to color coordinate the beds?
Oh, that's funny too. All right. So that was this year, and it was the teaching court. We did a teaching garden. So we received a grant from Whole Foods, Whole Cities.
Oh, wow.
So that's exactly how it is. So when we looked up different kinds of gardening ideas, right, there was just so many ways to do teaching. And one of them is is to color coordinate.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, we found some really great things for teaching gardens that would make it fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The purple one was up front, and my youngest is obsessed with the color purple. And she's like, wait, what can you grow in here that's purple, right? So the teaching with that must have just been phenomenal.
It has been good. And the same thing with, why are worms important? And, how many hearts does a worm have, right? Like the garden can teach us so much about life.
Yeah.
And so it was, how are we going to turn this garden into a place where you can learn about life?
The other thing I noticed that I was very conscious of and really impressed by, when you think of inner city neighborhoods and unsafe neighborhoods, you don't imagine lots of people picking up a book and reading it. Now, maybe that's an unconscious bias on my part. I'm totally willing to own that if it is. But when we walked up to the Peace House, the first thing that happened is a woman said to me, there are a whole bunch of books on the deck. If you like any of them, you can take them. And we noticed the little library. We have our own. We love it. The kids thought it was great that there were superheroes painted on it. And so that didn't surprise me. The little library didn't surprise me. But the front porch full of books and people going through them and talking about them and sharing them and offering them to us whom they don't know, and we look very different from them, and that they were so welcoming. Talk to me about reading and about books in the community.
Well, I mean, the stats, right? Most of our kids are completely behind by the time they are 3 and 4 years old, just due to early education. Mm-hmm. And, the last stat just came out not too long ago that pretty much Black children by the time they're in 4th grade are probably 1 or 2 grade levels behind in reading. 80%.
That hurts my heart.
Yeah, 80%. So I think when we look at that, we just basically, again, we believe so much in exposure. So if we have a lot of books, right, everyone in the community comes, picks up books. They want to read. We love to read. So it's exposure. We just started. I think sometimes what really becomes a hindrance, right, is that, if you move a lot, having books is not something that's easy to move. If you're housing vulnerable, books are not what you're going to have. Also, books are a luxury, right?
Yeah.
Spending money on a book is a luxury. Going to the library actually is a luxury. It costs money to get a library card. So,
does it really? Our library cards are free. That's interesting. The city charges?
Pay $1.
That's bullshit.
We pay $1, but on top of it, right, our kids have to have addresses. They have to have notices signed by their parents, right? So that means that, again, if you're a child that is, your parents are not really active in your life, you literally don't want to walk in spaces that point that out.
Absolutely. No,
So
people do not think about that at all. In fact, a couple of years right after the election, I may have told the story on the show before, so sorry if you guys are hearing it a second time, but I've never told Robbin.
no, I don't know.
My kids and I were at a fast food restaurant. Don't judge me. I don't do it very often, but sometimes it's a necessary evil. And there were two white middle-aged gentlemen next to us talking smack about the Obama era initiative to give cell phones to people on welfare. And they were bristling me in every possible way. And I looked at my kids. I had, at the time, I think my oldest two were 10 and 12. And I said, can you guys tell me why you think it would be important to have a cell phone if you didn't have home, if you didn't have enough money to get around? And they got it, right? Like I was loud right next to these guys. And like, how can you get a job if no one can call you to tell you you've got an interview or to come into work? If you don't have an address, yes, you can have a cell phone and be homeless. And that means you can rise up a little bit more. Why is this important? And I just laid it out on the table and they just sort of stared at me. And I was like, I am not going to let my kids listen to this without telling them why these things matter.
No, it's absolutely true. We are one of two houses on our block that have internet. And when you really think about that too, that goes back to
holy
how do you
cow.
expect people to get a job, and how do you expect you to get, if you do get a job, to get your schedule, and how do you communicate with the world and fill out resumes, and right. So we don't look at, we judge a lot of times, but we don't dig deeper into the why of the why of the why.
Absolutely.
And the why of the why of the why is I don't have it.
Yeah. Wow. So many extraordinary things that you are doing. And just the reminder that knowledge is power. And what I mean by that is the knowledge that you can grow your own food and it's good for you. The knowledge that you don't have to do what you've always seen done, that you can make different changes and choices and choose to be brave and, push back on those things. I just, I love it. I have chills. Did you always?
You don't have to be the person our society has told you to be, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
You don't have to be.
Literally get to be the person that you are. And that is a big awakening. And that's where we find connection and blocking, right? When you become true to who you are.
Yeah. Ooh. Did you always know this was incredibly brave work? At what point did you say, wow, holy cow, this is brave?
Oh, no, I don't know. I've always run a business downtown, as my team would say. I'm a capitalist. No, not at all. Just decided one day that I didn't want to work in my business anymore. And the only way to get out of it was I started taking a yoga class. It had nothing to do with what I am doing. I will say, though, that at a certain point, I look at my son and I look at my husband and I do say, right, I need to do something that makes our society the society I want to live in. Otherwise, we have to move. So it's one or the other.
I can only imagine that the work you're doing is incredibly fulfilling and satisfying. It is, even for me, to know that you're out there doing it and to be able to even take a tiny part of it myself. But there must still be things that hurt people who get hurt or trauma. How do you maintain a healthy boundary and a healthy balance between that and sort of carrying the weight of any of that? How do you build boundaries?
I would love to say that, here's the formula, but I think
I know.
No, not so much. I think what we do is, right, when you're out of sync. So
yeah,
you kind of have to tap out and say, hey, I just fell off.
Do you really listen to yourself there so that you can give the best? Sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't.
Sometimes it's just, before I started doing this, I went to see Father Flaker, who is out in Arbin Grishin. And I asked him, hey, do you think I can do this? And he literally just looked at me and he said, yeah, if you can stomach it. And I thought that stomaching it and being able to get through it was probably going to be the violence and the loss of people and, just what poverty really looks like right in your face. And it turns out that it was not. He was right. What it is can you stomach the politics of what leads to this that you cannot fix? And it is really true. I think that's where we stumble all the time, is in the politics of it, right? We've had a lot of tragedy. And when we have this tragedy that even the city is all up in arms about, right? We cannot get any type of wellness support for the community, right? So we know everyone is hurting. We know we're hurting. But, if my son was hurting up north, there'd be counselors.
Yeah.
We don't get that kind of help when we really have to dig into what mental health looks like in our country.
Oh,
it
my
is
goodness.
plain and simply terrifying. So, yeah, it's really, can we stomach what we have to do because our systems are so broken?
I wanted to have a quick, snappy comeback.
I was like,
I feel like I'm good at that. I'm a good interviewer. I don't know what to say. You're right. And it's infuriating and it's frustrating and it's heartbreaking. And
it's like, let's not forget, we are the ones that created this. We're the ones that sustain it.
Yeah.
Right? We're it. You're right. We don't get to blame.
No.
We're it.
Yeah.
So let's just start doing something about it.
And we're the ones that can change it.
We're the only ones.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So again, we hear so much about our criminal justice system, but right, when you start getting involved in it, you really you're like, holy crap, that's happening. And that's real,
yeah.
Right? Like, that's
Absolutely.
real.
We did an interview on the show with a man that I know. Actually, our kids went to preschool together, Omar Yamini, who spent 15 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit, based on the theory of accountability. And so when you mentioned earlier, you thought everyone who was in prison deserved to be in prison. And it's just, most of the people in prison don't deserve it, actually. Nope. Like, far more don't deserve it than do deserve it.
And is that really, when we really look at our society, is that who we want to be? Do we really want to be a society that responds to everything with punishment?
No.
We use the word justice, but how about if we use the word healing justice? And how about if we healed from the problems that created the problem to begin with? And we refuse to look past that individual, right? So instead we create a society of victims.
Damn. That's deep. This is why I do the work that I do. It's why you do the work that you do. And it reminds me that there's just always more we can do. If you can dig deeper, if you can offer more time or more money or more energy or more compassion, there's just always more. Always.
Or more awareness.
Find it. More awareness. Awareness is like I coach about it in a self-awareness standpoint, but you're right, from a community standpoint, just deeply trying to be aware and understand those who are not like you.
Right. And start asking a little bit more why, right? You don't have to go outside your house, but whenever, like, say you're reading about the Laquan McDonald case, right? How about if we ask just a little bit more? Why?
Yeah.
Why was Michael Brown out on the street? Why was he with a knife? And why did our police force feel a need to shoot? Right? Yeah. And why does our police force have high suicide rates and alcoholism and all sorts of really not wellness within their own districts? And we don't talk about that.
The problems are so deeply rooted, aren't they?
Yes, they are. But we need to get past just the beginning point. And if we can, and just start asking, hey, why do you really think that happened?
Yeah.
And get it just a little deeper. We don't have to get in it, just deeper.
Yeah. Yes, you're absolutely right. As you were building I Grow Chicago and the Peace House and the community, what was the most difficult thing? What was your biggest struggle?
The violence, right? I mean, initially, right, we were very, very violent blocks. So getting, the contractors would come, they'd start work and they'd leave, right? And they had every right to leave. Nobody wants to be shot at.
Right.
So, I think that part in the beginning was probably the biggest struggle, was really just getting it to a place where we literally could coexist together so that we could decrease the violence, so that we could all move forward.
Yeah. I can absolutely see that. What was, I don't even want to say what was the biggest joy, because I know there have to be a million of them, but can you recall one moment that maybe sticks with you the most, where you're like, this is worth every second?
Oh, God bless. We do mark those, like there are days we're like, okay, this is why. I think one of my first ones really was we were out putting some flowers in the ground, and this one young man was really helping me. And of course, when we say the ground, it's not like you just dig in it, right? There's cement everywhere, and houses used to be there and buildings were there. So you don't just get to dig and put a flower in the ground. You have to first get through all of the rocks and cement.
Yeah.
And I was doing it with this one kid, and our commander at that time had said to me earlier in the game that, hey, I just want you to know that kid is a cold-blooded killer. And he drove by while this kid and I were planting flowers, and he rolled down the window and he looked at me and he said, okay, this just might work. And I thought, so you just changed your opinion.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that for me was a really beginning of seeing that, right? We just don't need to judge each other for where we are. We need to judge each other for who we're going to be and who we are.
Yeah. Where you want to go, what you're going to do differently moving forward. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it was also the realization, right? The community had to see him differently, but equally he had to see the community different.
For sure.
And it was a really good awakening.
That's beautiful. I love that. How do you all celebrate success?
We have lots of clapping and parties and stopping and all of it is a success, right? Somebody gets an ID, or you plain and simply pass a test online. I mean, for us every day, there's just so many things that just plain and simply are the small steps to moving forward. Yeah. And all of those are met with joy.
I believe in the importance of celebrating success and spreading joy. It's contagious, and it changes people. It really does.
It does. Right. And for too, right, a lot of our community, right, hasn't had, nobody, depending on your home lives, you didn't have somebody who put your diploma up on the wall or took your artwork and stuck it up, right? So in our house, you can put your stuff up everywhere, right? We honor anything that you have accomplished. And some of those accomplishments are plain and simply that you got up, that you literally got up and walked out of your house.
I hear that.
Yeah.
I do a daily gratitude practice, and sometimes I struggle. Most of the time it's easy. I can find easily 5 things that I'm grateful for, from the sunshine to being able to call my mom because I'm glad she's here, whatever. But some days it's hard, and my life is privileged as all get out, right? Like I fully recognize that. So celebrating all of that, and it doesn't have to be a big thing. That's so, yes, get up, walk out of your house, be able to go back into your house, have a house to go into, have a place to lay your head at night. That is awesome.
Or the tragedies from last night are, that you can actually go into community to heal, that you don't have to lock yourself off.
Wow. That is so poignant. All right. So I really do think, Robbin, we could talk for a very long time.
I like talking to you.
We are. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really like talking to you as well. And I want to get more involved. I'm excited to go to your big fundraiser coming up.
Oh, yes, please come.
I have my tickets. I will be there. And I was able to, one of the things you do that I think is great is you offer people who are going to attend an opportunity to sponsor a community member to attend. And I was delighted to be able to take you up on that offer.
Thank you. The more community members we sponsor, the more fun we will all have.
Absolutely. So I really cannot wait. But other than I Grow Chicago, I have to ask you, what is your favorite charitable organization to support?
All right. So I did read that question and I thought, what will I say? The fact is, I pretty much, as friends, right, I support anything my friends ask me to support because I support my friends. So if you call me and it's the Holocaust Museum that you want to donate to, I will. I just had a friend who has a friend who bought some land in Colombia and they're making chocolates. I sent money. I will send money to anything that my friends believe in because I believe in them.
I love that. I actually am in the same boat. Since Facebook has allowed us to do Facebook donations, if you put a request out, I may not give a lot, but I give what I can. And I say yes to everything.
That's right. Yeah, I do too. Right. They're actually in the point of entry to changing our society. I don't care where you pin it, just plain and simply break in somewhere. And so, right, it doesn't really matter in the sense of charities. It just
Doesn't
matters
matter.
that we really somewhere start moving our lives forward in a
Absolutely.
humane and human way.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Robbin, I'm sort of at a loss for words. You are an inspiration and a motivator. And I just am touched and honored by what you're doing. All of you who listen, most of you who know me, know that I'm a fierce activist for social justice of all kinds. But I'm in awe of what you all are doing with I Grow Chicago. And it reminds me there's always more. And I said this earlier, there's just always more. It doesn't have to be as major as going and transforming a dangerous neighborhood into a peaceful community, although you can if you're so driven. Perhaps it's teaching a neighbor how to garden, as we talked about earlier, learning that you don't have to be close to a grocery store to have foods that make your body and your mind work. It doesn't, just do something. There's always more. We can trust one another. We can give each other a chance. We can change.
Can you imagine what difference it made that your kids came out and played hide and seek? Let's just go with our time.
Yes, it did. It was very, very, very notable to me. And actually it was notable to me that it wasn't notable to them in any way. It didn't feel strange to them. And I was pretty proud of that. But for me,
did it feel strange to the kid that was playing hide and seek?
No. And that was pretty awesome too.
And
the kid, you probably know who this kid is. I didn't catch his name, but he walked right up and he said, "I'm the king of this place." So you probably know who it is.
We have several children that believe they're the king, and they all are kings.
And they are. I said, "That's awesome. Nice to meet you, King." We walked out, but you guys just get out and do what you can and support everything. Just like Robbin said, doesn't matter where you give or where you start, just get in and do something. Robbin, will you share your 3 words with us one last time?
Shattered, anger, love.
Shattered, anger, love. Anger I get and love I get. Tell me why you picked shattered.
Because we are shattered. We're broken. And so I think as I started seeing different communities in our own lives and my own life, right, we're shattered. And we need to start healing and working together on our brokenness.
Yeah. Robbin, thank you so much for being here with me. Y'all can learn more about I Grow Chicago on our show notes and go out and do something in your community. If you take nothing else from this, go out and be a part and listen. Ask people questions and then listen to the answers. Robbin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. Look forward to seeing you.
I'll see you soon. Thanks, you guys. So this is Heather Vickery reminding you all to choose bravely. See you next week. The Brave Files is proudly supported by Audible. If you enjoy listening to podcasts, you're sure to love listening to your favorite books on Audible. Get your free 30-day trial complete with a credit for a free audiobook download today simply by visiting audibletrial.com/thebravefiles. Again, that's visiting audibletrial.com/thebravefiles. The Brave Files is proudly supported by Lost Format Apparel, a socially conscious clothing company. You already know that homelessness is a huge problem. Over 500,000 Americans are living without shelter and millions more without consistent access to everyday basics. My friends at Lost Format know that solving homelessness is a much larger problem than any one company or person can solve on their own. It requires teamwork, sacrifice, strength, and building communities through personal and professional relationships. And isn't that exactly what the Brave Files podcast is all about? That's why I'm proud to say that the Brave Files has partnered with Lost Format, and together we're working to change the face of consumerism in addressing homelessness. You can now get one of 2 fantastic shirts custom designed specifically for the Brave Files. Each order goes towards providing necessities to the homeless. We have one shirt that, of course, says "Choose Bravely," and another that reminds you that brave is always greater than fearless. Head on over to vickeryandco.com/store to see both beautiful shirts and to check out the entire product line from Lost Format. All of their stuff is super soft and comfortable and has an amazing fit. Use promo code BRAVE to get 10% off of your Brave Files custom t-shirts. And if you have an order over $30, your shipping is free. I choose bravely to take the plunge to help solve homelessness. Are you with me?
Thank you for listening to The Brave Files. Be sure to visit thebravefilespodcast.com to access the show notes and discover fantastic bonus content. Music composed and produced by Matt Lewis of Union Music, LLC.